match number 2 coming right up for you guys here at the Asia Pacific Grandmasters. We've got Glory versus Pathra coming up, and it is going to be Rogue versus Warrior. So this is a matchup I feel like we're going to be seeing fairly often over the course this weekend. Let's take a look at Patra's deck though, as she is going back onto the Warrior deck, which she's brought a couple of times now to Grandmasters. And I feel like I'm leaning towards talking about this every weekend, but I do feel like Bomb Warrior is just the most overall solid and consistent pick, or at least it has been every week.
I did end up agreeing with you last week, and for this week I definitely agree as well. It's just safe, knowing that Holy Wrath Paladin has received a huge buff. This deck still is great against it because it kind of punishes that game plan of drawing too many cards because it can die to the bombs. And it's not like Bomb Warrior has a bad matchup against Mage these days. They've now found the right ways to tech for it, and I do think its strongest weakness is Mid-Range Hunter, but Mid-Range Hunter I think also waned a bit in popularity now that people have found better ways to build Rogue and counter that. And Bomb Warrior also beats Rogue. It just seems like it has the most good matchups out of all the decks right now. It
really does, yeah. And just a quick highlight there, the usual list style, I would say, Double Brawl is important to note, but Ironbeak Owl as a small nod to all of the mech decks that are being used. For example, imagine an Owl in that last game where there was the huge Snip Snap. Well, no, you're back to a 2-3 again, friend. So for that, Patra's list is fairly standard. The Owl might come in useful a little bit, but let's take a look at Glory's Rogue, because Rogue has had the journey of a lifetime this rotation, this year of Hearthstone, is being undoubtedly one of the strongest classes we have ever seen in Hearthstone. And then it took some nerfs, and then I feel like every week the players are deciding a new way to play Rogue. There are people jumping on the literally pogo bandwagon, and then also players who are going, nope, you just ignore all that, go full aggro, and then there's play that's somewhere in between. But I feel like Glory here more or less is sticking to as standard a Rogue list, and with a slight aggressive twist on it as possible.
Yeah, he did bring Tempo Rogue last week as well without the Burgle package, but I think there's a bit of an alteration to his list now where he's got Fan of Knives in the primary and Hench Clan Thug. I don't remember if he had the Thugs there in the primary, but now he's got still the one Waggle pick, and it's just kind of sticking to his guns here because it performed quite well for him last time, and Rogue is still in a pretty strong spot, I would say, especially if you're expecting people to bring more Mage because of the Pocket Galaxy buff. In that aspect, though, I think Pathra had a pretty good read. She might have been able to get one on Glory, and I think her other opponent is also on the Rogue, so the Warrior Bring is actually great for her. And you mentioned Ironbeak Owl as being great against all these new mech decks that might be popping up. It's also got the added benefit of being great against Edwin Van Cleef, which is oftentimes just the one weakness of Bomb Warrior.
It is, yeah, and just to know as well, Glory, not really any silence, but Rogue has much less of a need to, because he is running double sap, which again, just as much against mech decks. Well, oh, you built a big mech, boom, back in your hand, now it's the small one again most of the time, so still the double sap from Glory. I feel like overall this is just a fairly consistent Rogue package. But yeah, nothing too surprising even in the secondary or tertiary lists, so to speak. But mentioning it of Patra's other opponent, who is going to be Shaxi later this weekend, another Rogue. Shaxi's brought a really weird Rogue that frankly I don't understand.
Yep, I
agree. It might, but Shaxi probably knows, well, definitely knows more than me about it, but maybe that list has a better matchup versus Warrior because of the sheer value, so I don't know how easy that matchup, this might be the easiest matchup for Pathra here, because the deck's straightforward, you know what it's going to do, so you can just beat it with the expected things that Warrior has.
It's true, and we've seen certain Bomb Warriors cutting the Weapons Project and Harrison package during the weeks when Rogue was still freshly nerfed and people didn't quite know how to build it, but now that it's kind of had its resurgence in popularity, now we're seeing the Bomb Warriors put back the Weapons Project, or at least the one of like Patra's running, and she's also got Harrison.
Okay, let's kick it off. Game number 1. Patra on the Warrior on the top, and Glory on the Rogue on the bottom. Patra's opening hand looks pretty good to me, Gia.
Yeah, it would be a pretty easy keep against Mage just to have minions to curve out with, but I'm not quite sure if she wants to have things like Omega Devastator, where, you know, playing a 4-mana 4/5 against Rogue is not the greatest thing to do because they can very easily clear it with their dagger and something like Eviscerate. So I like the mulligan from Pathra here. Gets a 1-drop, very rewarded.
Yeah, keeping Dr. Boom is fantastic though in this hand, and also the Clockwork Goblin in a slightly different way. It's just 1, it shuffles the bomb in, and 2, it just helps take down the turn 3 plays from Glory as well, or the 3 drops, I'll say, not necessarily turn 3, of course.
And already Glory is disincentivized from playing just the Cable Rat on 2 because it will get eaten up by this Eternium Rover. Not sure if Glory wants to expend a backstab to deal with this. It might be that he just daggers up and then plays a 4/4 Cleave next turn. Not too great for him here.
Could make it 6 if you just throw the prep.
Sure.
It's definitely tricky though. How the game plan becomes undone when your opponent actually plays 1-drops is so funny to me.
Yeah.
Because there aren't that many 1-drops in the game right now,
It's
right? Like,
yeah.
or ones that are this difficult to deal with. But yeah, the second just an awkward 1-drop comes down, you're like, my whole game plan, gone.
I know. I mean, it's not even just the fact that the Rover gets free armor from dealing with the Cable Rat. It's the fact that if Glory plays the Cable Rat, then Pathra will almost definitely trade, and then he cannot play backstab on it, and suddenly he doesn't have an answer for this 1/2 minion, which the more it gains armor, the more it powers up the Shield Slam, which can conversely deal with the Edwin.
It's just going all the way down the rabbit hole if you play the Cable Rat into this. I am very surprised at that play though. I honestly thought Pathra was going to coin out the Elic just to start steamrolling the tempo gain she's got by having the 2 minions down on the board. Also, you still gain the double bombs from the Clockwork Goblin in the following turn as well, unless the Elic is dealt with. And with Glory not running the Burgle package, it's much less likely to be dealt with because there's no Vendetta coming out of nowhere.
Yes, I would agree that it looks strange, but in this particular situation, I think it works out for her because that means if she had played the 3-drops, either of them would have been eaten up by this Eviscerate and she'd be left in the same position having to deal with the Van Cleef. Now that she's sitting on the coin still, she might be able to have the mana for something like a shield block to answer this.
Funnily enough though, there would have been enough armor to be able to armor up Shield Slam if the Elic was played.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's just a funny situation, isn't it? And it's definitely a tough choice. I think I normally just play aggressively with any deck. So I think it's why I always lean towards just coin out more minions, go. Pathra now has to work out what the plan is. She does have Militia Commander for next turn, which is good. So maybe this Clockwork Goblin is just going to be enough. You take 8, but then you have the 8 total damage next turn with the Militia Commander and the Goblin, because you have just seen your opponent use a lot of resources to get this Van Cleef out.
The problem with this is that no matter what minions she plays, it gets answered by the Waggle pick, and instead she's going to preemptively use her armor before it gets shaved to guarantee that the Militia Commander deals with the Edwin next turn. And I think this makes a lot of sense because there are no taunts in the Rogue deck aside from Ziliax, and nothing like Dread Corsairs that can protect the Edwin from the rushing minion, and there's also no way to heal the Edwin back up. Because had she played a 3-drop there, it would have gotten answered by this Waggle pick.
Yep.
Maybe that's me being results oriented, but this seems like the safest way to guarantee that the Edwin gets cleared.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, there's maybe not now, but yes, it is because, like you said, there are no taunts, and you can't kill a minion from hand, right? You know, you can't kill a minion that's not on the board. So having the Shield Slam is pretty good, especially if you take the thought path of, well, I'm never going to have more armor than this. So Shield Slam kind of never gets better, right?
Yeah.
So
it had the benefit also of just still saving the coin for more flexible plays and maybe getting boom sooner. And I would amend my statement of Edwin not being able to get healed. It can get replayed, but man, that was a very fringe situation for sure.
It's pretty sick though that Glory managed to not only deny the follow-up on the Edwin, which Pathra did flag, right? Pathra pretty much can just tell Glory she has a Militia Commander in hand, especially now after the Town Crier play. But not only doing that, but also keeping Edwin at an 8/8. It's not like sometimes you have to replay Edwin as like a 6/6 and be like, okay, it's not as good.
And now the interesting thing for Glory is that because he has that hard read in the Militia Commander, he'll probably want to Waggle pick into the 3/4. And he also has this option of double trading the 1/1s into the 1/2 to also remove Patra's only other possible answer, which is Brawl. Barring something like Shield Block, Hero Power, and Coin Shield Slam, which is not even enough. So, and not to mention he's already seen the 1 Shield Slam. So he actually has a way to just guarantee the Edwin sticks. I guess there's also the Iron Beak Owl, but Pathra would have played that if she had it in hand. Yeah.
You know what's really funny as well? If the Waggle Pick comes down, kills the Elic, the 2/1/1s trade in, then Glory can play the Shark swing with the pick. Oh no, sorry, can swing with the pick, shadow step the Edwin if it lives, play the shark, and then replay Edwin again. And I think that wasn't a bad idea to trade it all off. I do like your plan.
Yeah.
Glory shaking his head like he's unhappy.
Well,
Maybe he did want to consider the trades.
it was quite close. I mean, taking the 2 extra damage always seems good, especially since he's got a pick. But I feel like the only way he loses from here is to brawl or just have dead draws for the next few turns when he's trying to get the rest of the damage rolling. So maybe he's thinking that perhaps he just needs to hold the game out for a little bit longer because he doesn't have that damage in hand yet. Granted, Pathra doesn't even have the brawl, and still no good way to answer this Edwin.
This is why Rogue is never that bad, because it can play Edwin Van Cleef.
Yep. 13 showing for Glory. If
What
he-
mana?
It's lethal, right? Because whatever minion gets bounced, he can play.
Oh, the
thi-
follow-up, yeah.
Yeah. He can play it cheapened and
Yeah.
then combo off the SI7 agent.
That looks like it adds up to 2 to me. 2 damage from hand. Van Cleef gets played for the 3rd time. Why not? As a 2-2 this time. And that is going to be game, and Glory takes a quick game number 1 off the back of Van Cleef. And just off the back of, to be honest, a pretty cool play with that Shadow Step. Like, Patrick did sort of signify, or telegraph is the word I'm looking for, that she had the Militia Commander, which, yes, that was fine. Getting the damage in early with the Shield Slam was good, but it just meant that Glory then just had the information. It's like, well, you're setting up clearly a Militia Commander of some kind, or some kind of removal of around that health. Okay, I'll be able to just play this, Shadow Step, go again. And that was just the nail in the coffin, and the Owl not being drawn was huge. Imagine if Owl was drawn in that game. It just looks completely different and probably would not be over right now.
Yeah, and we can go back and maybe look at whether coining out a 3 into 3 would have panned out for Pathra, but honestly, there's so many different iterations of how that game works, and a lot of the time Rogue will just have their Eviscerate or their Waggle pick, and then you playing a minion doesn't actually accomplish anything. But yeah, I have to say, pretty clean play from Glory there to just, you know, be able to identify that this Edwin was his win condition. He should heal it for at all costs, no matter how much value it costs in his hand.
Yeah, and as we get ready for game number 1, Pathra is sticking on her primary deck, but Glory has moved to his secondary. So let's check it out and see some of the changes he has made, ready to take on Bomb Warriors. So break this secondary deck down for us.
Yeah, it is removing Backstab, Saps, and SI7 agents, all cards that notably are not great against Warrior because they are better against perhaps aggro. At least the Backstab and SIs are in the Saps you would rather have against Mage. But now he's including Geppetto Joybuzz, Chef Nomi, 2 schemes, and Harrison Jones. And the Jones is the one that, I mean, obviously it's there to deal with Waggle pick, but the Geppetto and Nomi, along with schemes, seems super greedy to me and something that I've not seen in a very long time. But, you know, just having Nomi's in a deck with Myra's just makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, and for me, this is one of these worrying scenarios. I'll definitely get the stats for this very, very soon for you guys. It's something I'm interested in is how often a player changing to a secondary or tertiary deck after winning game 1 do they lose? Because I feel like it's a lot. I don't know why, but I feel like it's a lot. And the problem here is I get what the secondary wants to do against a Warrior deck, right? You pack more late game, you pack more value and say, you can't remove all my threats because I just have too many threats. The cards don't exist, right? But after seeing game number 1, yes, Van Cleef pretty much carried the game, but in a deck where you're running Hench Clans, Van Cleef, the Shark for just as well as it's a value card, it's also can be a highly aggressive card, and all the lack is, I always wonder, like, do you not just want more threats in there, or maybe even more consistent threats, as opposed to taking out some cards and then adding in super late game stuff, because you might not even make it to the late game in a reasonable fashion, which means having all of these cards ready for the late game war versus Warrior. Like, well, Warrior can beat you up sometimes, and maybe that's just too slow. I don't know. It worries me.
I'd agree. I mean, I've not tested this particular build too much, but I will say that even though it looks kind of interesting that he left the Fan of Knives in, which seems like it would maybe in theory be a weaker card against Warrior compared to something like Sap, I think the game plan for this deck is is to just make sure you get to Myra's immediately and try to lock out the game going too long that the warrior can out-pressure you. And if you consistently can get Myra's and then land a Chef Nomi or even an Evil Miscreant and then scheme that, perhaps it is just enough to get there. But I'm definitely interested to see how this plays out.
Well, we're about to as we go straight into game number 2. Pathra currently down 0-1 versus Glory. As we just said, Glory has moved on to his secondary deck, and Pathra is on her primary. Just a quick note, her secondary looks much more built to take down Mage with Super Glider, an additional Devastator, but also a Korkron Elite and a Snip Snap. And then there's also some extra silence packed into the tertiary deck for Pathra, much more likely to take down those big mech decks that we've talked about, but are not really being played, at least in Asia-Pacific Grandmasters.
Yes. And the package of Myra's and Scheme, definitely there are just a few select targets that you would want to scheme after you've run out of the deck. And those are particularly, I think, the Heist Baron Togwaggle, or perhaps the Leroy in the deck if you get the treasure that makes them all cost 0 when you draw them, and that does a lot of burst damage towards the end. We were seeing that combo as early as Worlds, but it didn't quite pan out every single time, purely because, as you mentioned, sometimes the warrior can just pressure you.
Sometimes you just die.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nuts. And also it requires such a specific setup that Hearthstone's a little bit crazy at the moment, so you can't reliably do the same thing every single game. So it doesn't happen too often.
Pathra here, I'm sure what she is noting for the late game is to be able to hold on to at least one brawl for the Chef Nomi. But the thing is, Glory also has those shadow steps, so you can do that thing that you do against Warrior, which is just Nomi into Nomi into Nomi, and they won't have the third brawl.
Funnily enough, there's also a certain level of counterplay there, because the second your opponent Myra's and your Bomb Warrior, you could hold a couple of bomb generations and you put them straight in, and already they take minimum 11 because of fatigue hitting in as well.
Pathra, pretty easy militia commander here, gets a clean kill on the Henge Clan Thug. Yes, it dies to the dagger, but at least she's able to preserve the Eternium Rover here. I would definitely prefer to see the commander to the Wrench Caliber in double trade here.
Yeah, at worst you can always Wrench Caliber the turn after, right? It's to kill another similarly sized minion, it's definitely not bad. And as you said, you do save the Rover, which means more armor, which means potentially not dying to a Van Cleave.
Yeah. Everything circles back to Edwin.
Yeah. Just ask Staz.
Oh, yeah. And the 1-3 also has that added benefit of, you know, maybe the chip damage doesn't look relevant now, but later on it could be once we get to that Myra's situation at the late game. And also, it can deal with things like lackeys and evil cable rats very cleanly for Pathra.
I mean, honestly, if Eternium Rover hits twice and you Wrench Caliber face once, well, guess what? You've done 5 damage, which puts your opponent down to a lower multiple of 5, which means bombs are more likely to kill them off, so...
Glory looked pretty stressed there to see the militia commander hangs his head down, but I think he's still in a decent spot sitting on Miscreant, although maybe the turn is just Life Drinker to challenge the 1-3. The thing is, if he wants to combo the Miscreant, there's not a clean way to deal with the 1-3 just yet, unless he wants to
Prep Abyss? Well, you've got to work out, right? Does Prep Abyss now... You do have to expend the resources, but one, you get off the Miscreant, which is very, very good. But also, is this Eternium Rover going to do, or is more of a threat than the damage you deal with Eviscerate to, say, face? Like, or a minion, maybe? It's tough, right?
It is tough to say, and Glory here with this play was clearly hoping that there was no Wrench Caliber, but we see it is available for Pathra as a very clean kill on the 3-3. It is a little bit off curve, so maybe there's some consideration for Dynomatic, but I quite like getting the clean kill, equip the weapon, and then still have the Dynomatic for added removal later on.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because you might need to, if you don't Dynomatic this turn, you might need to Dynomatic next turn, and if you're doing that, you need to hold the weapon to try and get more value out of the Elic, potentially. So I think the Dynomatic just for an extra minion would look a little bit nicer to me, but don't get me wrong, this is still an absolutely decent play. Like you said, it's a clean kill, you've got the weapon locked up for the following turn, so this is fine. It just worries me that there's missed potential with the Elic if Patra's forced into something next turn.
I don't think she's necessarily concerned with getting the full value off the Elic so much as the upside of the Dynomatic being that you get a 3-4 body on the board, which I think is very relevant in this type of tempo matchup. But I do think that the Dynomatic can more often clear more things than just the 3-3. Whereas the Wrench Caliber, I think that is definitely the ideal target for it because
Right.
there's no more SIs. So the best thing it can get a kill on is the Life Drinker, but I would say it is quite close, that decision.
Yeah, this is the worrying card, isn't it, for Dynamancer? Even nerfed to full health.
Oh, double Lucky Lackey.
If you go Miscreant into stuff, the Miscreant soaks so much damage, it's absurd, and there's a Myra's.
Yeah. Already ready to go with the Nomi and Shadow Step in hand. That could be bad news for Pathra, especially since she's only got the one Brawl right now. Granted, there's some time to draw into the next one. But yeah, now the Dynomatic does nearly a perfect job of cleaning this.
Oh,
So the decision for Pathra there was whether it was worth, in all likelihood, leaving up a 1-1 Miscreant in order to save a weapon charge. But I wouldn't mind just seeing the full kill. That's unlucky, drawing the Myras as soon as you discovered one. But I don't think Glory minds too much because he's still got that killer Nomi combo coming up in a few turns.
It's one of those funny things, isn't it, where the Myras now isn't for the big value hand, it's to just make that deck counter on the right say 0, which is when Nomi comes into play, of course. So the having 2 of and making your hand slightly less powerful because it's -1 card effectively is a little bit frustrating because it could be a different card in the deck, but not the end of the world. The Glory definitely picked the right choice from the Ethereal Lackey there.
So I'm thinking the turn starts with some Cable Rats. The hand is definitely still looking too heavy to be able to Myras, but maybe he's considering it just because, wow, just because turn 7, Nomi, and then turn 8, Nomi again. The upside of this is you are forcing Pathra to have Brawl into Brawl exactly. If not, there's something like 36 damage or possibly even the full 42 heading her way in the next 2 turns. And that is crazy. And Glory just going to eviscerate the Dynomatic and I guess just make sure that his fatigue counter is as safe as possible.
Yeah, because one thing he does have to be worried about is, like I said, if Pathra starts shuffling bombs in, it's guaranteed damage every single time. There's no way to negate them, apart from being on 10 cards, which Glory just isn't.
Yeah.
He made the choice not to be.
Notably, he didn't even draw a bomb off of the Wrench Caliber charges. How do you deal with Nomi here? I mean, she has Brawl, but this is a ticking time bomb for the next one, and I think she should have a very hard read on Nomi on 7. Maybe she doesn't have the read on Nomi on 8, but with the speed that Glory played that Myras, I would be very scared of even up to 3 Nomis.
I think if your opponent Myras is like this, which is a terrible Myras for value, you have to expect at least 1 Shadow Step, because you don't make that play with no Shadow Steps against Warrior. So you have to expect at least 1, and there needs to be some kind of plan here.
Yeah. The plan is draw the second Brawl. Well, the first one definitely coming out here. I think
so
4 or 5.
Pathra needs to just go face and win
the
Brawl, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much just the plan right now.
Yeah, and then drop an Elec on the top of it, I suppose. Maybe there's some merit for considering a hero power with the Rover, but you need to be very aware of the damage cutoffs. Expecting the second Nomi next turn means that it's like 42 damage. I don't think the armor is relevant, or not more so than the Elec being on board.
I think you need to kill them.
Yeah. So in that case, the Elec is just a 3-4 body and also threatens bombs. Devastator first one out. You hate to see that if you're Pathra, and it's the second Brawler dream here, isn't it?
I don't, because the problem as well is now any minion you put down doesn't do anything. It either gets traded off, fine, or it hits face, which Glory doesn't care because he wins the next turn, unless it's exactly Brawl.
Okay.
Also, well, there's...
I was going to say that the 1-3 sticking maybe gives her a little bit more time because the Warpaths can squeeze out more armor, but
it doesn't do enough, right?
Yeah.
There's no spell damage card in Patra's deck to help with the the Warpath tech for beating Nomi, because Nomi kind of fell off in popularity a little bit. This is just nuts. But this is why it's really funny that Glory packed in loads of late game value, and only to play an even more accelerated rogue game with the Myras. And that's just game.
Can she survive with a Zilliax just there to stop 2 hits?
So remember, the dagger will take... It'll only stop 1 minion hit, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is it only heals 3 anyway,
exactly.
so it's not even gaining that
There's
much.
still 36 after the 1 minion attack, and that would just be game. That is crazy. Just the Nomi on curve with the Shadow Step. There's just not much the warrior can do. And maybe I was wrong to criticize Glory for going for the Myras right there, because I guess he identified that the chances of her having double brawl this early on in the game are very low.
Well, you can see a couple of turns have gone by, and there's 16 cards in now with that draw, but there was, what, like 19 cards when he played Myras? Your opponent's not only drawn a third of their deck, it's unlikely they have double brawl. And also as well, there was still certain levels of value with the Cable Rats. Getting lackeys, which can then discover spells, which can maybe help Glory out as well, but Glory knows.
Exact lethal after she heals back up to 36, and there's 6 6s on board. That's a rough one.
Yeah, and it's a big one for Glory as well. He's currently sitting 3rd place in Division B, and he's going to be going to a 5-2 record after this match. So, of course, we don't know where everyone's going to land until the weekend is over, but Glory continuing to at least solidify a top 3 spot, or at least do his best to with a 2-0 victory. Is also going to help him out in some tiebreakers to a certain extent as well, but Glory's looking like he's doing it pretty fantastic there, and I don't know, it's really funny to me that the additional cards look like they slow the deck game down, but if you play like that, they actually make the game go faster. But the Shadow Step and Nomi in hand sealed the deal for Pathra for me.
And to be fair, Glory did discover that first Myras, and he had that game plan in mind from the very second he had the option. It just so happened he drew the second one and played that one instead to give Pathra less information, but he definitely was rewarded for going all in so early. But I still think that the deck building choice is maybe not ideal in this scenario, though it did very well pan out for him, and he played to that out, so kudos to him.
Yeah, so Glory takes down Pathra on her warrior to go to a 5-2 record. He's got Dawn a little bit later on this weekend, so he's going to have to take down that Druid. Might see those Fanny Knives come in handy after all. But that's it for match number 2. We've got our feature match coming up, and it is going to be Samuel Zhao on the Hunter versus Shaxi on the Rogue. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with the feature match.